And welcome everybody. Thanks for joining me again on Thursday for the part 2 of new user orientation. And actually I think I want to probably do a more regular session. So rather than just having these 2 new user orientations, what I think I'll do is set up a regular, either a weekly session or every 2 weeks, and just have a period of time when I'm online where you can just join in and ask any questions, or if you would rather send them via email, send them to me, and I'll try and answer them in the video. As I think that from feedback from the last video, a lot of people found this quite useful. So today we're going to focus on, I have a few questions that came up, so I'm going to talk about those, and then I'm going to get going with some of the new things. First of all, there is a disclaimer, of course. I'll be showing a few stocks, and I'm not recommending buying or selling any of those. This is all just for informational and educational purposes only. So we'll talk about trading templates. Before we do that, I'm going to just answer a few questions that came up from last time, and let me just find where they are. Over here. Okay, so a few questions that came up. First of all, I talked about trading templates and the fact that when you run a template, it generates a report in Excel. So one of the questions was, what version of Excel do you need to run those to view those templates? Well, they're XLSX files, and you can open those up in Excel version 2007 or later. So yeah, so that's the answer for that one. Secondly, and I'll just show you what I mean down here, by the way. So remember I said everything's under the EdgeRater folder, and if you look in reports, the templates are all XLSX files. And if you have the latest version of Excel, they'll open up with the latest version. You can actually have more than one version installed on your PC, but I tend to uninstall the previous versions when I put the latest one on. So that's that question. And secondly, a question came up about backing up. How do you back up the software? Say you wanted to install it on a new computer. How do you go about doing that? Well, everything that you do in terms of customization is stored under this folder called EdgeRater. We talked about that last time. So the things that you can customize are things like chart scripts. We didn't talk about how to do that, but if you customize a chart script, it ends up going into this file here called myscripts.xml, and whenever you compile it, it goes into the compiled directory. Symbol lists are under here too. So if you want to back up completely your installation, you could always just save this or copy this EdgeRater folder and all of the subfolders off to another location, and then when you install EdgeRater on a new machine, it will put an EdgeRater folder in the documents folder for you, but then you can copy over the files that you had from your other machine, and everything should be back to normal. But there's one caveat to that, which is if you uninstall and reinstall, no matter, even if you copy back over this this folder and all the subfolders, you still have to, there's one setting that you'll have to go and make sure is correct still, and that, I think I said this last time, in the data providers, the actual checkbox, the check mark that's next to your default provider, will that is not stored in those folder locations, so you have to go in and reset that when you do a reinstall. So that's backing up. If you wanted to save a bit more space and you didn't want to back up the whole of this folder, you can pick and choose. If you wanted to just back up chart scripts, you could go and just choose that folder. If you wanted just to back up the symbol lists but not the data associated with the lists, then you could go into the symbol lists folder. So various ways of doing it, but probably the simplest and safest way is just to back up the whole of this EdgeRater folder, and then you'll have everything should you need it. Okay. Another question came up about backtesting templates. So what that means, what I understood that to mean, is if you if you have a template and you run a template, let's just run this template, for example. Okay, and it's given you essentially a list of all of the stocks that are in your symbol list, but it's ordered them and sorted them in terms of the things that this template is looking for rise to the top of the list. So the question was, how do you backtest a template? Well, if you think about it in terms of, this isn't really giving you definitive signals. It's more of a case of pointing you in the direction of stocks to look at based on this criteria. Then the backtesting of it there's no real sort of cutoff in terms of how far down the list you go in terms of looking at stocks and getting signals and testing them. So there isn't really a way of automated backtesting of these templates. But what you can do with most of these templates is you can run the template for a specific date, and then you can do some manual types of backtesting if you want to do that. So I'll quickly show you how to do that. So let me see. We're running this template, and this is the template I'm going to be talking about today. So it fits in with what we're doing. So if I just hit run, it's going to run the template based on the last date of data we have in the symbol list, which was yesterday, the 10th. Wait a second. That is today. So I actually have, right, what I did an intraday update on this list. So let me just get rid of the intraday update. So based on yesterday's data, July the 9th, if I run for July 9th, then I'm just running, and it's using the latest date of data. Now, if I wanted to find out what this template was saying on a different date, I can use this little drop down up here under historical, and what that's going to do for me is allow me to choose a date to assume. It assumes that the date is a certain date, and it runs a template as if you were back on that day. So, for example, let's go back to June, and we'll say June 2nd, just as a random example. And then if I hit run now, I now have this template as it would have appeared on June 2nd. So now you can sort this in any way you like. You can click on any of the symbols and you'll bring up a chart. If you had highlighting on, annotations on, it will actually now be pointing you towards June the 2nd, because that was the date that we ran the template. And this was trying to pick out pullback in an uptrend. Actually, this one did a fairly good job, because there was an uptrend here, there was a pullback here, and we're going to talk about that in a second. And then it picked out this stock right here, and so it ended up being a good pick. But to backtest these, you could either manually scroll through the list and take a look at what happened in each of these cases. There are some that are not so good, obviously. But if you wanted to be more precise, you can actually do something that's pretty cool here. You can select the stocks that you think you might have been interested in, just by highlighting them in the symbol column, or any other column actually. So if I went down this column here, I could highlight these, and then I can say add to entries. You see there's a button up here, and if I say add to entries just straight away, that has then gone and added to my entries and exits tab those stocks for June the 2nd. Remember last time I talked about how to do backtesting, and it filled in all of the prior dates, and it gave you signals for all of the prior dates, including the current date. Well, if you just do this manually within a template, it's just adding the items for the day that you selected. They can then become your entry signals, and you could then either choose some exit signals, or you could just go straight to trade simulation and say, what would have happened had I taken long positions in those stocks at the close of the bar that was highlighted, that was signaled, and I held them for 4 days, and I exited on the last bar, and then I could hit run on here, and then we have a list of all the trades that would have been made. So, and obviously then we can click on a chart and we can now see the entry and the exit, and then we can scroll through this list and we can see exactly what would have happened. But the big advantage to seeing them in this, or having them in this trade list, is you'll then get to see the trade summary, which will show you how many winners there were and how many losers, and the average profit and loss of the winners, and the average the average profit of the winners, the average loss of the losers, and the overall average P&L of all of the trades. So you have that. You have the daily equity chart as well. You can see from this chart, because there are only a few trades, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 trades, we can see the distribution in terms of percentage gains on here too. So anyway, that's one way of doing back testing of templates. But the general thought behind these templates is that they're not really systems that give you definitive entries and exits. You know, it's not the holy grail. You need to what it's going to do is bring to the top of the list things that are of interest. It finds things that are of interest that are occurring today, but it also finds things that have occurred in days past. So you don't have to keep track and write things down day after day. Just the things that are of interest in the last few days will filter to the top of the list. And then you would apply, you know, your own discretionary ideas on top of that if you wanted to choose between them in terms of what to trade. But it's not a holy grail, but this system does allow you to go and do some sort of testing. If you wanted to find out how these things performed in up markets or down markets, you can definitely go and do that. So I had one other question, but I think I'm going to leave that till next time, and that was, for those of you who asked me that question, was about how to run the warehouse report and how to save HTML files from HDSI in order to run that. But I'm going to save that one and move on to the topic for today. So let me just check on questions on the board. Great, okay. So a few people still having trouble with the audio, but it looks like most people have figured out how to get that working now. So great. Right. Let's get back to the PowerPoint. And I'm going to go through. So the two things I wanted to cover today that are both template ideas, and the first one is the one we didn't have time to get to last week, and that is Jeffrey's pullbacks in an uptrend template. So we were in Florida just a few weeks ago, and Jeffrey had a great meeting in Florida, and I met many people there who were on this webinar today. But while I was there, I had the privilege of on the Friday before the seminar of going to Jeffrey's apartment, and this is Jeffrey's office with his multiple computers. I got to take this picture, and I couldn't count them all here. There are more than you can see, but if you know Jeffrey, you know that he has, you know, a new computer I think arrives at his apartment every week. So he has about 10 laptops on display here, and a very nice office, I might say. The template that we worked on together prior to this meeting was to do with his A trade, and that is he's looking for stocks that have been in an uptrend, that have pulled back somewhat, and are then starting to move again, and they pull back to within a good support area, which might be a certain distance from a moving average. To get this template, everybody should have this template. If you have the latest version of the program, which everybody should have because it's automatically updated whenever there's a new version. Let me just show you this because somebody actually asked me this question too. Right. So you should find it on the right hand side under the list of categories. It may be at the very bottom, so you may have to scroll down and find it down here. But these categories you can move around. So I tend to move to the top of this list, whatever is I'm currently working on or whatever I'm currently going to be showing people. So if I was, for instance, let me drag the let's talk about MACD divergences. If we were using that every day, we'd probably want MACD divergences at the top of this list. So you can just click it and drag it up to the top, and that way you can sort your list of categories so that you don't have to scroll down all the time and find the templates that you are interested in. So if you don't have Jeffrey's category there, then the other thing to check is that over here at the top menu, you have under Excel templates, it will say what the latest template set that is available is. So 2014.6 is the latest available, and then my version will tell you what version of the templates you have installed on your system. And if it matches, then it's green, meaning that there's nothing to do. You have the latest version. But if it doesn't match, that would be red, and then you would click on Get Latest Templates. A dialog box would pop up, and then you can say download the latest templates. They should download, and then what will happen is the right hand side, the categories will be should all come back to the whatever has been downloaded in that package. So yeah, so that's how to get those templates in for the other question I had there. Now let me just bring this back. This is an example of what we're looking for with these pullbacks. And really the question was, when I was working on this with Jeffrey, was how can we define what an uptrend is? And there are various ways of defining an uptrend. You can take a simplistic approach and say if a stock is above a certain moving average, then it's in an uptrend. For instance, the Connors templates, and Larry Connors in his books and his strategy guides, when he's talking about short-term trading, one of the first rules in each of those strategy guides is the stock must be in a long-term uptrend, which he defines as the stock being above the 200 period moving average. So it's a simplistic approach, but because you're using such a long period moving average, you might look at the chart and the stock looks like it's actually going down, even though it's still above the 200 period moving average. So then you have to sort of think about, well, maybe I want to use a shorter period moving average, and all kinds of questions come into play there. So instead, we decided to use the zigzag indicator, and I'm just going to explain a bit about what that is. Excuse me. So the zigzag is this line here. It's the straight line which goes from peaks to troughs to peaks to troughs and so on, and it picks out the peaks and the troughs based on a granularity that you set within the zigzag indicator. This particular one is looking at 5% changes, which means that if price changes more than 5%, then it can legitimately draw a line in the new direction. So if the price is going up, and then it comes down more than 5% and then starts resuming a trend, you can actually legitimately draw a trough. But until that point, you can't really draw the trough. It has to meet that threshold. And a good example of that, actually, you can see that right here, is that on the first part of the chart, the price went up to this bar here, pulled back some, but because it didn't go back more than 5%, it didn't draw this new down leg down here. So the zigzag then is basically the thing that we use to define what the previous uptrend was. So The area on the chart in the middle here that we're looking at from the trough of the zigzag to the peak. We are interested in how many bars there are between the trough and the peak. The number of bars and the percentage gain will give you an idea of how fast the stock moved from point A to point B. So that would be the first thing that this template is looking for. Basically an uptrend. The second thing it's looking for is a pullback from that uptrend. So a new downward leg would have to be drawn, which would mean that it would have to have exceeded 5%, and anything more than that will then be part of the pullback. So here you can see that this stock pulled back to the trough here. There were a number of bars in the pullback, and the number of bars and the percentage of the pullback will give you an idea of the speed of the pullback. Now the percentage that's listed in the template when you run it is not the percentage difference between, or the percentage change from the peak. It's actually the percentage of this uptrend that it pulled back. So if, for instance, the pullback percent said 50%, then it really would mean that the pullback came down halfway of the uptrend. And so then the third thing we're looking for is we've got the pullback, and then we're looking for moves that start to go in the direction of the previous uptrend. Now the zigzag line in EdgeRater will actually start to draw the line as soon as the move happens. It won't wait for 5% to draw the latest line. That's just for the historical, when it's looking back, when you're looking back at other peaks and troughs. But when it's drawing the current bar, if the current bar happens to move and be a higher close than the previous bar, it will start to draw a line in the new direction. But it won't be confirmed until you get above 5% for the zigzag indicator. Okay, so I'm not sure if that. Let me just ask if that. Does that make sense to everybody? Can you type a Y if that makes sense, or do you need more clarification on that? Great. And you can't see my cursor, okay? Yeah, Brad, I'm recording this, don't worry. Okay, good. So that seems clear. So then those are the stocks that we're interested in. Doesn't mean they're all going to be great stocks and go on to make new highs, but the ones that come to the top of the list are the ones that we want to be looking at for potential entries. So let's run this template based on yesterday's close end of day data. So I select the category. These are the 5 steps I went through before last week. Select the category, select the template. I already ran this, so I don't need to run it again. But if I hadn't run it, I would do select the category, select the template, select my symbol list that I want to run it on, update the symbol list, and press run. Okay, and now I have a grid or a spreadsheet that has brought to the top of the list things that we have said are interesting, because it's sorted by custom sort number 1. And so that confuses some people. What is the difference between custom sort? What does custom sort 1 do? Custom sort 1 actually just, you can look at the if you weren't really clear about what it is, and I should say that it's actually listed in the template info what sort number 1 is. But if you wanted to find out what it really is, for instance, if there was a discrepancy between that description and what it was actually doing, you could open up the template in Excel and look at the formula in here. It's just an Excel formula, and this particular formula is looking for, it's giving you a true value whenever the current direction is up, the pullback was less than 100% of the previous uptrend, and the impulse is in the current direction. I didn't mention what the impulse was, so let me go back and just tell you the the third part of that. That was, have we seen an impulse in the current direction? And the impulses here have been defined as either a big kahuna, a little kahuna, a pocket pivot 5, or a pocket pivot 10. So, but we have to have seen that impulse in the current direction. And if you just look at the first part of this template, that's really, it's a summary from essentially here to here. That's a summary. That's probably all you need to look at. The other parts of this template, if we scroll over to the right, are numbers that have been calculated by the template that have all been used to produce the information you see at the front. So you rarely need to go further beyond and scroll to the right, but sometimes it's interesting if you want more details. So this, for instance, this impulse these impulse columns here, where there are 4 impulses we're looking for, this is telling you how many bars there have been since any one of these impulses. So I can see that based on yesterday's closing data, we had a big kahuna, and that's what we had. Now if I scroll over to, or not scroll over, if I look over to the J column, I don't need to look at these 4 columns over here. I can just see the J column, because that has basically summarized, it's showing me the smallest number for the bars since impulse. So I know there's been an impulse, one of these 4, today. And today meaning yesterday, because that's when the end of day data was for. So so bars since impulse is a useful field to sort by, because you can see when those impulses have come in to the stock. Let me bring up a chart that might help explain a little bit more. Okay, so I'm looking at Facebook, and I'll remove this annotation because it's getting in the way a bit. And I'll try and explain then. First of all, when you run this template, you should select the layouts, and then you should go down to Jeffrey Scott pullbacks in uptrend layout, and that will make your chart look exactly like this chart, which will have your zigzags, a few moving averages, it will have kahunas at the bottom, and it will have pocket pivots under that. So it meets the criteria that we already talked about. There was a trough down here, there was a peak up here, so there was an uptrend. Now if I look at, let me scroll that down a bit and let's compare this to the actual information on the row. Okay, so the previous up column is telling us that there was a 20% up move. So that means from this low here to this high, there was a 20% change in price over 38 bars. You could go and count those, but I'm pretty sure that would make 38. Then this downtrend is now the pullback, and that was a 46.9% of that up move. It pulled back 46.9% of that up move over 4 bars down. Okay, we can count those easily. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then the current direction is where it's headed right now since the trough, and the current direction is up. Let me just zoom in on that a little bit. Okay, so we can see the current direction is up. Not greatly up, but it is up, meaning that the close price yesterday was higher than the close price of the day before. So potentially there is a bounce here off of a, well, was it off of a moving average? It looks like it on here, but you can tell if it was off of a moving average from even within the template. And you can also see the percentage that it has moved up. So between yesterday's close and today's close, that was 4% move up. So even just by looking at the template report, we know a lot about this stock before even looking at a chart. So we can sort this in any way we like, and then just look at the ones that are interesting. So I said there's a way of finding out how close it came to the moving average. So if you wanted to scroll over to the right of this template, then one of the sets of columns is the proximity of the pullback low to the moving average. Okay, so it came within 0.37% of the 50-period moving average. So you can scroll over here and see that information, or you can use custom sort 2. Custom sort 2 will actually now filter, or sort, sorry, by the stocks that were within 5% of one of those moving averages. So now everything that has a yes in column 1 and a yes in column 2 become things that are potentially more interesting because they were in an uptrend, they pulled back to within 5% of one of the moving averages. And the sorting in the report works like that, in terms of the first sort will happen when you run the template. You can then further sort it by clicking on various columns. Whatever column you click on last becomes essentially your primary sorting column, but the other columns stay sorted within that sort. So now we have a list of stocks that we might just want to review for the day. Another thing that's useful here, and this is useful now because the market has just closed and we don't have end of day data yet, but what I could do is, this is a list of 310 stocks that have weekly options. If I press this intraday update button, we see that it's already gone out and it's already fetched data for the close of today. So July 10th. So now we have actually closing prices for today. We can run this template again. And we can then apply our sorts again. And Facebook again is at the top of this list. But this time there are 3 bars in the current direction, and let's look at the chart for this. We have an extra bar coming in on this chart. So it's still trying to move up in a new direction. Okay, so the point of this is, even if you miss a day, you don't run this template for a few days and you come back in. The things that have been of interest are still going to come to the top of the list. So you don't have to run it every day and write down a whole list of stocks and try and create watch lists. You just run this when you're interested in finding stocks, and the things that come to the top of the list, if they signaled something today or if they signaled something several days ago, they're still going to be somewhere in this list and towards the top. So it's quite a useful feature in that respect. And let's just scroll through a few of these while we're here. And I'll just pop this over to the side and we'll go down through the list, find out why they made the list. So here we have Groupon. You see there was an uptrend here. And you might say this isn't an uptrend you'd be interested in because it came off of this longer term downtrend, but you can easily see that from the values here. The previous uptrend was a 23% move over 17 bars. You might be interested in different characteristics of trends, but using this template you can sort them any way you like. Okay, so there's an uptrend, pullback to one of the moving averages, and looks like it might be wanting to go again. It had an impulse yesterday, but maybe not. So, and then you can quickly just scroll through this list and find things that you might be interested in trading. So that's pretty much the template. Are there any questions on how that works? I'm just going to look at. Thanks, Ian. Good. Right. Do you distinguish between the uptrend line and the confirmed uptrend line? The uptrend that we're talking about here is just as I said before, it starts to make a move in. That's a good question. It starts to make a move in a direction, but it's not confirmed up until it hits 5%, based on the properties of the zigzag line. That's just how the zigzag line works. It needs a certain threshold before it starts moving or being confirmed. So at the very end of the chart, it's starting the move, but it's not confirmed. It won't be confirmed until it goes over 5%. So that's really what the template is looking at. But that's the way you want it to work, because you want to find things before they've hit 5%. They may be too extended at that point. You want to find them as they're just about turning. If they've had impulses coming in at the same time, then you can be alerted to those things sooner. And so really that's what you want. But be aware that if it doesn't hit the 5% and then price comes down below, say for instance at the very end of this chart, say we didn't hit 5% between here and here, and tomorrow, say price closed down here, then this is not a confirmed. I use the word confirmed loosely. This line will actually be redrawn to be down here if it didn't get to 5%. So just be aware that that can happen. That if you look at the chart on subsequent days, the troughs may not be in the same place. And actually, when you run this template on another day, if price had come down below here, it wouldn't spring to the top of the list, because the current direction would then be down, and the trough would be in a different place. So I hope that answers that question. Ron, what is big kahunas? Yes. So Ron asks, he knows what pocket pivots are, but what are big and little kahunas? Let me just explain about that. And that's a terminology from HDSI and from Ian, and Ian is actually on this webinar as well. So a kahuna is a amount. It's a percentage. It's based on the percent B. So how much a stock moves in its 1 day percent B change. If you imagine Bollinger Bands around a stock, and you divide the distance between the top and the bottom Bollinger Band into 10 intervals, then a big kahuna is defined as I think it's 0.4, so essentially 40% of the distance that it would move in 1 day, and that's indicated by a big green up here. A little kahuna is down here, and that's defined as I think just over 20% change. So yeah, so that's what kahunas are, and it's basically considered an impulse indicator, because something happened to the stock that made it move a lot between its Bollinger Bands in 1 day. Okay. 0.24. Thank you, Ian and Marilyn. Yes, 0.24 is for the little kahuna, right? Which is 24, essentially 24%. Great, thank you. Okay, I'm just looking through some other questions here. Okay, so John says that his list of weekly options doesn't match what I have in my list. There could be various reasons for that. The weekly options list was installed when you install. It's one of the only lists that's installed when you install the software, and so that is just a text file on your hard drive. If you look under symbol lists, weeklyoptions.txt. That's all it is. If you've gone in here and changed it or added anything to it, then yours will look different to mine. It could also look different if you don't have the data updated to the same date as I do. If there is a note, for instance, if you have a list and it wasn't able to get data for a certain symbol, then it's not going to actually appear in here because it won't have any data associated with it. So you may see a different number of stocks. But yeah, in my list I have 310. Those are the things to watch out for, just if you've added or removed any symbols, or if there isn't any data available for a symbol that you have. Okay, John. Let's see. Paul, can the 5% be changed in the zigzag? So the zigzag, As you see in this template, and you can see some of the lighter colored areas of this template, these are things that you, they're lighter color because you don't really, I'm not trying to draw your attention to them, but they're values in the template that are actually used in the configuration of the template. So here, I'm looking at this cell, and it's running a chart script which is looking for zigzags with 5%. It's the brackets 5. If you change that, if you went and created your own template, I'm not going to talk about how to do that in this webinar, we can do another one for that. But essentially you could change that and you could have different values for your zigzag. The other thing that's interesting, before you even do anything like that, what you probably should do, because this is very easy to do, is go in to the chart, look at your formula parameters, and you see Z% here, Z% is 5, and you can see what it means in terms of where it's thinking the peaks and the troughs are. Well, I can change that here. So if you think it might be better if it's 24%, now you can see it's redrawn this zigzag line because it's looking for bigger changes. So you could go through and you could change the setting in the chart first, and then just go through and confirm that that's what you really want before you make a change in the template. The 5% is a reasonable number that picks out, is going to pick out more stocks than a higher number would, but it might not be as interesting to you. So you have to make your own decisions about that. But 5% will pick out everything. You might just have to look through a few more stocks. Okay. All right. I'm gonna move on. There are a few more questions here. I will get to these, but I just want to move on quickly because one of the other things I wanted to cover today was this idea, the new thing with annual trends. And what is annual trends? What does it mean? What does that mean to most people? Well, most people say, when I talk about annual trends, they come back and they say, what you're really talking about is seasonality. So annual trends is seasonality. And that's fine. It's just a difference in terminology. But the idea with these templates is that if stocks have a certain move that they make in a certain time of year, every year, this tries to pick out those stocks. And you can do it in a number of different ways, and I'm going to show you those ways right now. But first of all, to make everybody clear on what I'm talking about, say we take one stock, Amgen, and I want to look at the period from June to July 2004. It's highlighted in red here. Well, I can see that was overall, there was if I took the beginning of that period and I took the end of that period, that was an up period. And I could calculate how far that went up. I can go to 2005, take that same period of time, and now I can see that there was also a big up move in Amgen. Now, if I look at 2006, there was an up move. 2007 looks like it went down. 2008, exactly the same time period, June to July, so 2-month span, looks like it went up. And I could just can stroll through all the years, and I could take down the numbers, and I could write them down, and I could figure out what the average move up or the average move down was. And then I can figure out how many years it moved up and how many years it moved down. That is what the template is telling you. So there are various templates in annual trends. There's a 1-month template. Let me quickly run that. So 1 month takes every single month, January through December, and it gives you those numbers based on a 1-month time span. So for instance here, January means from the beginning of January to the end of January, how many years did it move up, how many years did it move down, and what was the average up, or let's say the average up or down. So here I know that PHM in January over the last 10 years had a 9% average move up, and it moved up 9 years and it moved down 1 year. Same for February, March, and so on. But it's only a 1-month time span. If I look at the 2-month time span, run this again. All right, now I'm looking at the performance over a 2-month period starting in whatever month is indicated here. So the January column means that it is for the beginning of January to the end of February. So the 8% figure here and the 10 and the 0 means that AGU in January and February time span for the last 10 years moved up 100% of the time. Each year it moved up, and with an average of 8%. So that's what it sort of is trying to pick out, things that might have a seasonal aspect to them, and so on and so forth with the 3-month and the 4-month template. This would be useful if you're looking for, or just in general, if you're looking for ideas around seasonality. You just might be interested in what stocks have a seasonal move. You can use these monthly templates. If you're looking for things right now for trading, say you've already found something in a from some other way, maybe you used HDSI and you've got some fundamental information, and you've got some things that have come to the top of your lists. Now you can run the Annual Trends Now template. Now, instead of taking January, February, March all the way through to December and just giving you fixed time periods, what it's done is taken the current date, and it's now saying what has been the historical performance over a 2-week period starting from now. For the first column, a 1-month period, 2-month period, and so on and so forth. So this now template is something that's more useful for if you're looking for trades to make in the current time frame. The other templates would be just useful for generally researching on seasonality. And so with these templates, the other thing is with every template, it's the same interaction you have. You can sort these things by up years or down years, percentage up, percentage down for any of these periods. And you can also, and if I wanted to find something, for instance, that actually has 10 years of data like this, so I'm looking at ALXN, 9 up years, 1 down year, 16% average up over a 3-month period starting July 10th going through to August, September, October the 10th, 3 months. And then I can always double click on the stock symbol and it will bring up a chart, and obviously this is showing me the last chart layout that I had selected. So if this had also come to the top of your list in one of the other templates, then maybe this then becomes a good trade because it, historically has had a good performance around this time of year over a 3-month period, depending on what sort of time frame you're looking for making a trade. All right, let's see a few questions here. Can you look up individual stocks for seasonality? So yes, you can. You could, if you had a particular stock of interest, you can go to your list on the left, and you could uncheck everything. And if you were interested, for instance, only in, I can do a search for Control F will do a search. I could search for Apple. So you might only be interested in Apple, and I could place a check mark next to Apple. And even if I close down this, I still have Apple checked and none of the others are checked. And then I could just run this template for Apple. The other way, which is probably not quite so clear, is if you just leave everything checked and then you run. And then once you click on the template and you do Control F in the actual template report, I could then search for Apple in there. And then obviously there's a line 18. But now you have to highlight it to make sure you're looking at the right thing. So that if you're looking for specific stocks, there are a couple of ways to do that. Okay. Yep, you're welcome. Steve, if you change the verbiage on line 4, instead of Jan, change to Jan through Feb, it might help you understand. Yes. So for instance, on line 4, yeah, it's possible here to make a change to make it clearer if that's not clear. Have to think a little bit more about that. I'm always concerned about just having these things be concise and not too, not too much information in here. But yeah, in that case, it may be clearer. Thanks. Can you search for stocks in a particular time period? Well, that's really what the only time period that you can search for is either a 1 month, a 2 month, a 3 month, or a 4 month period, starting from the beginning of the month, in theory. But here's another way to work that, and I just thought of this, but let's see if this works. This should work. So I click on the Now template, and say I'm interested in what the seasonality was from, say, let's choose a date range. But a date range would have to be either a 2-week range, a 1 month range, 2 month, 3 month, 4 months, or 5 months range. You can't sort of specify different ranges than that. But if I said from March the 15th is what I'm really interested in, then I go to my run date for the historical here, and I can go back to March 15th, and then I can run this template from there. And now, because what should happen, and this is the other thing, this is an interesting point too, because I have intraday data in my list, this is historical. There is a slight bug, which I'm going to fix, that the historical does not work once you have intraday data in here. The way to get rid of the intraday update is to, if you change the list to a different list and then come back to the list, what it does is it drops the intraday data that it previously collected. So now I'm just looking at 7/9, and now I can use this. Now I can use this historical date. So now you can see that the date in my report is 3/14. So these values for the span are going from March the 15th for either 2 weeks or 1 month or 2 months or 3 months. So yes, you can change the start date, but you can't exactly specify an end date if you're interested in that. It would have to be one of those periods. Okay, so Stephen, is it from today, i.e. 5 months, is July the 10th through December the 10th? It is from the opening price of the next day. Okay, the opening price of the next day, and each year that might be slightly different depending on where the holidays and weekends fall, but it's from the opening price of the next day going out to, for instance, a 3-month period would go out exactly 3 months to the closing price of that exact 3-month date. So it's always from the opening price of the period to the closing price of the period, and it's always a calendar period. So hope that answers that question. And is that clear? Is everyone clear on that, or are there any other questions? If you're clear with that, could you type a Y, please? Awesome. Awesome. Okay, great. So one last thing I wanted to show in this session, and then we'll do another session. Probably try for next week. I think Thursdays seem to work well, so I'll try for that. And I'll send out an email about that one a little bit later. But the last thing I wanted to show was when we were at Jeffrey's workshop, John Person came and gave a presentation, and one of the things that he looks at is something that we have in underneath the Pro Tools category, is the % change template. And so I put together a list while I was in the presentation. I put together a list of what he had on his slide, which basically a list of sector ETFs. And then if I'll just show you how much data I've got for this. I'm only updating for 1 year of data. So I've got data from 7/10/2013 to 7/9/2014. And so if I run this template, I then get to see the percentage change for all of these ETFs. And the cool thing you can do with this template is there's a little scroll slider bar here. So I can go and now change the start period for when it starts doing the calculation. So if I leave it set to the very beginning, then I know that the percentage change from 7/10/2013 to today is highest for the stock here and lowest for the stock down here. But if I change my start date, you see as I scroll through here, the percentage changes obviously reset based on the date that I've now currently selected. So now I'm starting on well, let me change it to the beginning of the year, as that might be more interesting. Okay, so now we can see which of these sectors have performed best since the beginning of the year. So that's an interesting template because it is dynamic. It's recalculating all of those values every time you move this scroll bar. Everything's being dynamically recalculated to give you the numbers. But that was just something of interest for everyone who was at John Person's talk. He showed something like this, and we have that available in the software too. So we have just a couple minutes left, and well, maybe 1 minute. So I think we're just going to wrap it up now, and I'll send out the link to the recording. And if I'm just going to look at another question. Yeah, there's a link to the first webinar. I'll send that out. And in fact, if you just go to the YouTube channel, you'll find all of the videos, all of the links. All of the videos that I've ever done are on the YouTube channel, and the YouTube channel is called EdgeRater Video. So if you go YouTube/EdgeRater Video, and then there's a couple of playlists. I think I added a playlist for all the webinars, so you can take a look in there. You'll see the link to the first one, and I'll put this one in there too. I'm just going to see if I can answer. Great, thanks, Matt. Vince, yeah, the chart settings, I'm not going to go through those now. If you look at the first webinar, I went through chart settings in quite a lot of detail. I think your question will be answered if you just go and check out that. So I will send a link to first video, but again, if you just go to the YouTube/EdgeRater, you'll find it in there too. Okay, thanks. All right, thanks everybody, and have a great day, and I will hopefully see you next week. Bye for now.